So let's be real. Most people don't stay broke because they're lazy or dumb. They stay broke because they've been trained to think like broke people and to act like that. And when I say broke mindset, I'm not just talking about not having money. I'm talking about how you think about money and how you actually treat it. How much do you value $1? So pretty much broke mindset is survival thinking. It's living paycheck to paycheck. Even when you get a raise, you're actually going to increase your lifestyle expenses when you get that raise. Let's say you're earning $100,000 in 2025 and you get a raise of $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is. You then decide to go and get that bigger and better apartment or to buy the car that you always wanted. And pretty much that raise isn't being saved, it's not being invested, it's not actually bettering yourself. It's just going into buying things. And if you didn't buy things, let's say you bought an experience. Let's say you took a vacation to Cabo. Let's say you take a vacation to the Caribbean. That's the same thing, maybe even worse because that money's just up in smoke. At least with the car, you're buying a depreciating asset. But, let's say it's worth $30,000. In a few years, it's going to be worth like $15,000. It's a depreciating asset, but at least you have $15,000 rather than the vacation that just went up in smoke. But the point is that you're living paycheck to paycheck because of lifestyle creep and lifestyle inflation. And most people don't realize that they're actually doing this. The average person out there doesn't think about it. They think, oh, I'm going to get more money, time to spend more. No. You need to get into the mindset to actually be like, oh, wow, I'm actually earning money. I'm going to earn more money. I'm going to save this because it's going to only exponentially help me get to my goals in the future. And maybe that's the first step. Maybe you need to realize that you need to have goals actually in order to build towards it. What do you want your life to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 25 years? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? And what's important to yourself? You really need to sit down and think about this stuff because you really can't build towards your goals if you don't have any goals. And another thing that people do in the broke mindset is pretty much blaming external factors like the economy or inflation or your job, and you never actually look in the mirror and you say, what can I control? What am I doing that's actually affecting my situation? A couple examples that come to mind is, am I playing DraftKings? Am I gambling? Am I buying Zins and fueling my nicotine addiction? All of these things cost money. All of these things have real life consequences for your health, for your mental health, for the people around you. What are your actions? And what do they say about you? What do they say about your future and where you're going? What do they say about the people that you surround yourself with? Actually take a look at what you're doing, what you're spending your money on, and say, hey, is this who I want to be in the future? And if it's not, then make change. The hardest thing that you can do in life is making a real change, and that's why so many people don't do it. And the sooner that you make a real effective change in your life, the better. So if you're in your 20s, I'm 27 years old, and it's been a wild ride the past 6-7 years since graduating college. Making change in your life is so important because if I looked back at myself 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I'm a completely different person. At that point in my life, when I was 21 years old, I cared about other things like making a lot of money, seeming cool, traveling, and just doing anything I wanted to do rather than trying to actually build the future that I wanted. I knew I wanted a certain type of future, and I know that I wanted some life of abundance in the future, when I'm 40, 50 years old and have that option of retiring early and doing what I want when I want, but I wasn't making actual change in my life to achieve that. I was going out to the bar 2-3 times per week, on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and then Sunday would roll around and I would look at a heavy bill and I would be tired, run down. I wasn't focusing on my side hustles, on my health, on my relationships with my friends, my family, my girlfriend. It just all was falling by the wayside, all the important things. And I was giving all of that up for what? Temporary, short-term gratification by getting drunk with a bunch of people and, achieving nothing at the end of the day. So it's that type of change that you need to really look yourself in the face, in the mirror, and say, hey, where am I going in my life? What am I actually doing? So if there's one sentence that sums all that up, it's most of the time what's keeping you stuck isn't your paycheck, it's your perspective. It's your actions. You ever heard the statistic around lottery winners? Pretty much 70% of all lottery winners go broke within 5 years. And why is that stat so high? Honestly, it's pretty simple, because those people who actually won the lottery, they didn't have the financial tools, the mindset, the actual mindset to handle that amount of money. They get a huge win, they get $1 million, let's say, and they end up going broke because they didn't know how to actually handle it. And what does this say about these people, the 70% of people that go broke? It says that majority of people aren't ready for that because they didn't have a mindset shift first. It's not money that actually will change your future, make you better off in the future. It's a mindset shift, because even for these lottery winners, winning the lottery did not help them. It caused them to go broke. Once you flip how you see money, how you use your money, then the change starts. So you don't need a lot of money right now. If you're in your 20s, let's say you're in the age of 20 to 25, you have decades to go. But the sooner that you change your mindset, the better. If you're 25 to 30, guess what? You are still in your 20s. You still are in the best decade of your life when it comes to actual compound interest and money working for you in terms of saving, investing, and building a future. And guess what? If you're in the range of 30 to 40 years old, it's still not over. That decade is pretty sweet as well. You still have multiple decades to go before you actually need to have some sort of retirement built up. So the time to implement change is sooner rather than later. So I want to talk about 3 different traps that I've identified that, pretty much stop me from actually making that change. And these 3 traps, I need to address these because it was huge in terms of changing my mindset. The first one is that I'll save what's left over. You really can't save what's left over, because if you're in a bad money mindset, you're just going to be spending. You're going to spend the whole paycheck. So you need to pay yourself first. If you're able to flip that habit, then you can go from reactive to intentional. You can actually make intentional decisions that are going to put you closer towards your goals than further away, because rather than just willy-nilly stumbling through life and hoping it all works out, you're going to have a game plan and you're going to execute on the fundamentals, the steps that actually get you to the finish line. And it's easier said than done because consistent change every day is tough. There's going to be days when you don't want to actually follow through on your decisions that are building up to a goal. If you want to save $10,000 or $100,000, it is tough to save, $50 a day, $30 a day, $20 a day, whatever it is. Like, this is an example of it. It's tough to actually do that for 100 days straight. There's going to be days when you say, hey, I've already saved up 50% of my goal. I've already saved $5,000 of the $10,000 that I want. And, I can splurge and I can do whatever and not save today because I've done so much in the past. And that's just something that you need to deal with on a daily basis. You need to remind yourself that it is those fundamental decisions, those daily decisions that actually have a real life difference for the future. The second thing that I want to talk about is people saying that they don't have enough money to actually budget. If you make, let's say, $10,000 per year or $100,000 per year, you can still budget. You can still save and track your expenses. And it is still applicable for people whether you are on a low income, a medium income, or a high income. It is very, very applicable to actually see where your money is going, what you're spending your money on, how much you're saving, and how much you're investing. And I would probably argue more so that it's more important if you have a lower income to actually budget, because every dollar counts. If you're on an income of, let's say, $50,000 or $60,000, right near the median income in the United States, it's so important to actually know what you're spending your money on, because you'll be able to actually chop down expenses that you don't need in your life. You'll be able to actually see how much you're saving per month to see if you're actually building towards your goal on the right time frame that you set out for yourself. You'll be able to see and project if you have enough invested for the future. It is so important to budget. This is something that people overlook, that people give, go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, and then they give up. It's something that you really, really need to look into, and it doesn't really matter how much you make. And the third thing is that people say that they're going to start once they make more money, once they get out of debt, once they do this, once they do that. They are just in the planning phase. They're stuck in the planning phase and they're not in the execution phase. and they're unable to actually make real change because of it. You're not able to actually make those changes because you're giving yourself excuses. And that excuse is that you just don't make enough right now and that you'll do it in the future. You're putting that problem on your future self, and it's not going to go well because you'll always say that. Let's say you make $50,000. If you get a $5,000 raise, that still won't be enough to actually start. And then, you move from 55 to 65,000. You'll still say you don't have enough money. You're going to start later when you make 100,000, whatever. It starts today. It's all about a mindset shift. And there's nothing stopping you from actually making change today. All of this is just an excuse for you to not make the tough decisions today. Because guess what? It's tough. It's not easy. If it was easy for everyone would be rich. Everyone would be doing what they needed to do to actually accomplish their goals. But how many people around you are actually accomplishing their goals? Probably not many, because the average person just isn't doing that. And do you want to be average? No. So actually make change on a daily basis, do the hard stuff, and get it done, because it will pay off in the future. So now let's talk about the 2 ways that you're going to shift your mindset to actually make this change happen. The first one is that you're going to stop surviving. You're going to get out of that survival mindset, and you're going to start strategizing. And what this could look like is, budgeting, like we just talked about. It could look like you make an Excel spreadsheet about goals, about, different money accounts that you have and how much you need for this, how much you need for that. It's all about actually putting it on paper, putting it onto some sort of, goal on, just get it written down and actually see where you're going. You need to have a strategy on how to get there. Me personally, I love to budget in Microsoft Excel. I pretty much do everything in Microsoft Excel. If I want to build up a down payment for a house, I don't own a house right now, but I am working on it. That exists in an Excel document for me. I just can't do it without it because, I don't know, like if I want a $500,000 property, I need at least $50,000, 10% down, to actually make that achievable, to make it doable. And how am I going to save that $50,000? It's not going to come out of thin air. I actually need to strategize for it and see how much can I save per month to actually build and chip away at that $50,000. That's an example of strategizing. And what you want to get away from was what we were talking about, which is the survival mindset, which is pretty much putting in $200 here, $400 there, $300 there, and hoping that it all works out. But just know you're going to come up short because you're not consistent, because you're not actually doing it on a daily basis. You don't have any strategy. You're stumbling through the plan. And just know that this can apply to other things in your life too. It doesn't have to always be about personal finance and money and stuff like that. A strategy for working out is always great. Knowing, what you're going to be doing on each day, what type of lifts you're doing, how far you're running. Consistency is key when it comes to lifting, and it's no different for other areas in your life. That's another great way to look at it. In terms of fitness, people don't get absolutely shredded overnight. They show up every single day to actually see that result happen. If you want to quit nicotine or tobacco, if you want to stop partying, guess what? You need to consistently say no and turn that stuff down. It doesn't work if you just be like, oh, I'm going to buy some Zins this week and I'll skip next week, but then I'm going to do it again next week. It doesn't work. You need to pretty much say like, hey, I quit on this date. It's been 1 week. It's been a week and a half, 2 weeks, and consistently say no. You need a real strategy to get things done. And then the second shift that you need to make happen in your life is going from short-term gratification to long-term focus, like a long-term decision, a long-term goal that you're focusing on. The short-term gratification days, I get it. If you're 18, 19, 20, 21, I get it. I was in college once too, and it's so easy to do short-term gratification, to go out partying on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to spend your money, to waste your time. I get it. But if you're able to make that change in those years, good for you. If, like most people, you're just kind of following the crowd and figuring yourself out and figuring out your future, that's fine too. But the sooner you change, the better. And the sooner you get rid of that short-term gratification and focus on your long-term goals, the better, because the earlier years count. If you're able to lock in by 18, 19, 20 years old, you have a leg up on everyone else who's 25, 27 like me. You're almost a decade. You almost have a decade more time than we do. And it's so important in terms of money, in terms of health, in terms of working out, in terms of, whatever goals you have in life. It's so, so important. So if you can kick that mindset straight in the garbage, get rid of the short-term mindset and write down your goals, see where you're going, track it, and say no to the short-term gratification. It will pay off. So honestly, that's how I look at it in terms of why people go broke, why they stay broke. It's all about the mindset. It's all about how you think and look at your problems, your actions, your decisions in life, and how you're going to move forward in the future. The sooner you realize that the human condition is to pretty much be lazy and fat and lazy and spending money on everything and living for the short term, the now, you just need to actually change the mindset. It's a real life decision that you need to make to say, hey, I'm not going to do that, and to actually build towards long-term goals. Because if you decide to stumble through life, it's not going to go well. The human condition is just built to not really build anything successful over the long term if you don't take actionable steps. But anyways, this is just my opinion on it. If you enjoyed it, let me know. If not, also let me know. But I'll see you in the next one.